In the daylight, cruise ships provide sun and fun, and at night, they delight with high-quality diversions. Entertainers on board are often rising young talents, getting crucial experience as they launch professional careers. Sally Miller is a bright young talent, Broadway bound, and the lead singer in the onboard principal variety show. Sally's a star, and her colleagues and audience know it. She has admirers everywhere, and some of them are secret. She's young, talented, beautiful, and experimenting with romance. On August 14th, 2014, she's enjoying herself in the ship's bar with friends old and new after a performance. And later, she wants to be alone. But is a closed door enough to keep Sally safe? Sally Miller is from Cleveland, Ohio, and born on January 22, 1990. Sally graduates high school in the class of 2008. She attends Cleveland State University as a musical theater major. Her parents know their daughter's gifted, and they do everything they can to nurture Sally's talent. Following graduation from university in 2012, Sally moves to New York City, intent on making her dream of being a musical theater star a reality.
Sally's professionalism and drive sets her apart from the very beginning. Very soon, she starts to audition with the other hopefuls in New York. Luckily for Sally, she doesn't have to rehearse or pound the pavement for very long. Her talent is recognized almost right away.
An entertainment company specializing in providing high-end luxury cruise lines with performers offers Sally a contract. And Sally signs on for her first professional gig as a musical theater artist. She can't wait to tell her parents she's been hired to sing. Her dreams of becoming a professional artist are now in motion. Sally becomes a crew member entertainer on a luxury cruise ship and embarks upon her on-sea musical career.
Mixed emotions for Sally's parents as they walk her onto the ship. They're really excited for her new career and the opportunities that are in front of her. But they also know that she's going to be a long way from home.
Sally's the lead singer in the cruise ship's principal show, and she's vivacious and glamorous. Sally exceeds expectations in rehearsals, and her professionalism sets her apart. A lot of people in the company are interested in Sally, but Andreas moves in with confidence. Andreas is the company guitar player. Sally appreciates his talent and she's receptive to his advances. They begin dating, and Sally and Andreas fall in love. Sally is living her dream and dating a handsome professional musician.
When Sally and Andreas first met and first started dating, Sally was really excited about it. Here was this professional musician and a singer-dancer. What could be better than that, right? They were perfect for each other. Of course, being on a luxury ship complicates the relationship. It can make things seem more fairy tale than they really are and confuse the situation.
Sally is popular, admired by her fellow cast members, and every night center stage in front of an appreciative audience who can't get enough of her voice. Sally's committed to her starring role in the performance and also to her personal relationships. She does her best to juggle work and play, but sometimes the demands from both spill over into each other.
Andreas has become aware that Sally is very talented and is getting a lot of attention from a lot of people. The issue here is whether or not a partner can handle this level of attention or not.
Sally is always working toward her goals, and as a performer, her body is her instrument. She takes great care of herself, exercising, eating well, rarely drinking, and never taking drugs.
What some of her friends don't understand, and including Andreas, is that Sally is a consummate professional. She cares about her work above everything else. This is her dream. This is her goal. It's the most important thing in her life. They're either going to step up or they're going to get left behind.
Two years pass. Sally works hard every single performance to develop her skills. Her confidence has grown. She knows that she's on track to be a musical theater star. Not everything is going smoothly, though. Unlike her career, which is on a clear trajectory, Sally's love life has become far more complicated than the early days on the ship.
Some would say being on Broadway is an impossible dream. There's so many thousands of people that have that dream. But everyone who knows Sally agrees that if anyone has the potential to make it, it's her. So it's starting to seem now that perhaps Andreas isn't quite at her level. When you're dating someone who's as young and beautiful and talented as Sally is, you have to understand that there's going to be attraction from other fans, other male admirers. But not every partner is able to cope with this sort of attention.
When there are so many admirers, things are bound to get ugly.
Sally's a talented young woman and she's just living her life, and she's really not aware of all the challenges around her and the jealousies that are there.
Is it possible that a gathering storm of social conflicts can derail Sally's goals? Are jealousy and resentment enough to destroy what she's worked so hard for? Sally's path to Broadway is about to hit a dead end. Sally is a young singing sensation on board a cruise ship, and she's popular with her fellow performers and audiences. She's so popular, jealousies between her admirers start to flare. When Sally first embarks on her new job on the cruise ship and begins her relationship with the company guitar player, Andreas, it's a simpler time. She and her new boyfriend are in love, working on a glamorous show and enjoying all the benefits of being on a high-end luxury cruise. Complications are few. Sally may be young and in love, but she's career-driven. Her leisure time interfering with her professional life would be unacceptable, but balancing the two are complicated.
For Sally, being late for rehearsal, or worse, not being early and fully prepared by the time everyone else is ready to go, is unthinkable. She would never do that. She's starting to realize that not everyone else in the company matches her level of commitment and professionalism. When two performers are working in the same show together, they better be in agreement about what level of commitment they're going to have to the show, above the relationship, especially when you're dating someone like Sally. If not, there's a chance that one of them could be left behind.
Sally accepts nothing less than complete focus in the rehearsal room. Tiny cracks begin to show in her relationship with Andreas. But for the moment, the couple agrees more than they disagree. Sally uses every opportunity on the cruise ship to develop her artistry. Her castmates encourage Sally in the dream they know she has and tell her to consider leaving the cruise ship when her contract is up for renewal, to start pursuing the Broadway career she's always dreamed of.
It isn't that surprising that someone who's not as talented or dedicated as Sally would see her going off to New York to pursue her dream on Broadway as the beginning of the end of their relationship.
A career in the arts is difficult to achieve. It might be easy to take that first job that comes along for steady employment, as opposed to living with the fear of taking that shot on Broadway and never becoming successful. Sally has all these friends around her who are encouraging her to throw caution to the wind and take that shot. Sally has the talent to become a star, but that means she also has the potential to leave Andreas behind.
Sally and her boyfriend Andreas's differences are becoming more apparent, and they're growing apart. But Sally's young and not quite ready to take the next step by leaving him. The end is coming, and it won't be easy. Sally finds time to rehearse for the Broadway auditions that she knows will be in the near future for her. And she has a lot of support from her fellow castmates. But sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who hold us back. And it's a fact. Sally is a performer who was born to soar. The strain is starting to show between the couple, and Andreas can't hide his feelings anymore.
And then the inevitable happens. Sally and Andreas have the conversation that they both know they've been avoiding. Unfortunately, Andreas's insecurity has finally pushed them to the brink. Sally tries to reassure him, but it doesn't do any good. It's over. Sally ends their 2-year relationship, and Andreas is devastated.
Andreas can't accept their breakup. In fact, he refuses to acknowledge that it's over. Sally's star is rising, and Andreas can only watch from the sidelines.
Working so closely together on the ship, Andreas can't help but notice how popular she is.
Then, Sally inspires yet another fan to come backstage and thank her for sharing her talent. And Sally is always gracious when meeting fans. Sally's newest admirer, a casino blackjack dealer named Thomas, seems enthusiastic and eager to get to know her better. But she bids him adieu for the evening.
Sally was out with her friends at the bar. Thomas was there, but she didn't drink too much and she didn't stay out late. She went back to her room alone. Sally has a rehearsal and a show the next day, and she always puts the performance first. Although Sally's seen going into her suite alone, there are several people who are interested in keeping the night going.
Sally passes the disturbances off as her friends playing tricks on her. She begins to turn in for the night.
Sally got back to her room just fine, but she is in danger. What happened after she closed the door? Was anybody in the room with Sally? Who knows what really happened?
Cruise ship performer Sally breaks up with her longtime boyfriend Andreas. But she doesn't lack for new romantic prospects. Sally goes into her room alone that night, and despite her locked door, Sally is not safe. Earlier in the evening, Sally pays attention to an audience member who is a new, enthusiastic fan. But Sally always gets a lot of attention. One day earlier, Sally finds an anonymous bouquet waiting for her outside her cabin door. Admirers appear to be abundant for Sally. The flowers, though appreciated, go with the many others she's received during her tenure aboard the ship. Sally gets on with her daily routine. The cast enjoys working out and spending time together in their off hours. Mike and Sally have always gotten along well. Now that she's no longer with Andreas, they see an opportunity to explore their feelings. No one in the cast yet imagines there's a spark between them. When they're finally alone, they're able to express their interest in each other.
Sally's concerned that her breakup with Andreas 4 months ago is still fresh to him, so she's hoping that she and Mike can keep their relationship private. Mike tries to make Sally feel better about the Andreas situation, but Sally knows Andreas better than Mike.
Concerned they're being watched, they head back to Sally's cabin. Sally and Mike begin a physical relationship, and they agree to do their best to keep their affair private to spare Andreas's feelings. As for the anonymously gifted bouquet of flowers, Mike insists it's not from him. They leave for rehearsal together, taking precautions in case Andreas is nearby. At rehearsal, the two act like nothing has changed in their relationship. Sally wants to know if any of them put flowers outside her room. No one will admit to it.
Even though Sally and Mike have done a good job of keeping their relationship a secret, Andreas is still upset about the breakup, and his stress is about to boil over. Rehearsing during the day and performing at night might seem grueling, but this cast is able to perform a variety of shows. Today, they're blocking off a new routine that's not particularly complicated.
With Sally leading the way and the show's director guiding, the performers learn the new routine. It's business as usual. Suddenly and unexpectedly, an accident occurs.
Sally's accident is strange. It's not like her to stumble, let alone fall. She's a strong dancer, and it's just not anything anybody would expect from her.
Sally comes to a few minutes later. She doesn't remember what happened or how she fell.
The details do start to come back to Sally after a few minutes. She remembers feeling a slight pressure on her back, like perhaps she didn't fall and she was actually pushed.
Fearing a possible concussion, the director immediately escorts Sally to the ship's doctor. The doctor thoroughly examines Sally. She's healthy and fit, and he believes there will be no serious effects from the accident. He prescribes her some medication for the pain and to help with the dizziness. Sally's improving by the minute. She assures the director that she's almost back to normal already, and after a short rest, she'll be able to perform that evening. While about to leave, the director discovers more flowers have arrived outside of Sally's door. Though sent anonymously, they must have arrived in the short time since Sally returned. Sally knows that she's in the thoughts of someone.
At the bar that night, you wouldn't have known anything was wrong. Sally betrayed no sign of her accident whatsoever, and she also didn't show any hint that she had a developing relationship with Mike. Perhaps that hurt him a little bit. Sally could be making her new lover jealous on day one of their relationship. Now, Mike is jealous that Sally's giving attention to a man she just met. Sally's starting to feel like the men in her life just can't accept her for who she is, a naturally outgoing, friendly person. Sally's resolve to leave the ship and pursue her dreams on Broadway will maybe help her get away from these relationships that are becoming very stifling. The ship is getting too small for her.
The next morning, a cast member is sent to look for Sally when she fails to show up for rehearsal. It's completely out of character for Sally to be late. But Sally is nowhere to be found. When they've looked everywhere they can, the captain agrees to unlock Sally's cabin door. And inside that locked room, they discover the unimaginable. The ship's doctor is summoned to Sally's cabin. He arrives quickly, but Sally's life is on the line, and it may already be too late. This is a code red emergency, and Sally could be out of time. Cruise ship performer Sally Miller has an accident during one of her rehearsals, though she bounces back quickly and appears her usual fun-loving self in the bar after the show. But the next morning, after she's late for rehearsal, she's found unconscious in her bed. The ship's doctor arrives as quickly as possible. Ship medical staff performs CPR. Sally is so young and healthy, it's inconceivable that she not revive.
But that's exactly what happened. Sally's gone. She was pronounced dead at 10:48 a.m. August 14th.
Everyone's in shock, and the captain wants answers.
Privately, the doctor shows the captain what he discovered on the back of Sally's neck when he was doing CPR. Here's some blue marks, which may indicate foul play.
Well, I mean, technically blue marks are usually bruising on a neck. You can get bruising from either a strangulation or actually the use of a ligature, meaning somebody has put a piece of material around your neck to try and cut off your airway.
The ship is docked outside Auckland, New Zealand, and the captain calls in the New Zealand Police Department for assistance. Cruise lines are known to handle these matters internally, but in this case, as they are in port, local authorities are involved.
It's vitally important that any physical evidence be collected as quickly as possible to ensure the integrity of the investigation.
Soon, the ship's crew and the New Zealand police work together to search Sally's room for answers.
We follow almost the 5 W's, the who, what, where, when, why, and how something has occurred. It's almost like building a puzzle.
Could any of the events from earlier in the evening have led to this point?
Mike and Sally have a conflict because he's very unhappy that she's now paying all this attention to a male fan she's just met. Sadly, this was also witnessed by her jilted, unhappy ex-boyfriend.
It is reported Sally has one more drink and then gets up to leave at approximately 12:30 a.m. Andreas insists on walking Sally back to her room, and Sally's friend Jane follows. Jane is concerned about Andreas following her back to her cabin, but Sally tells Jane it's fine. Jane relents, and Sally and Andreas continue without her. This version of the story makes Andreas the last person to see Sally alive, as far as the preliminary investigation reveals. But the facts are only beginning to come to light.
No one wants the authorities to believe that they were the last to see Sally. The story seems to point to Sally being alone in her room that night. Someone may have believed he should have had more time with Sally, and perhaps he took that opportunity. Investigators will try to piece together the few clues that they have to figure out what happened to Sally. We do know that she had a strange accident in rehearsal earlier that day. We know she fell and hit her head. She was out cold for a few minutes. There were witnesses, but they didn't know what was going on.
The doctor sees Sally and sends her on her way. She is able to perform that night, but does her fall have a greater impact on the final outcome? Is it possible the accident, in combination with the medication she's taking, has something to do with what happens in the middle of the night?
It's not like Sally to overdrink when she goes to the bar, but is it possible that somebody slipped something into her drink while she was there?
Sally's affairs have created many jealousies, but who would go as far as to try and hurt her?
One thing we know is that a lot of men have expressed interest in Sally. Some may not have the best motives. Some may not be pure of heart. Could one of them have gone too far?
The officer notes that Sally has a bluish discoloration around her neck. Police need to run DNA for sexual interference and interview everyone Sally was with the night before her death. Cruise ship entertainer and rising star Sally Miller has been found dead in her stateroom. Docked outside of Auckland, the New Zealand Police Department are called in to investigate. The ship's doctor informs police about Sally's accident earlier that day, and it's clear there could be romantic intrigue surrounding Sally. The interrogations begin.
Even though people think Andreas was the last person to see Sally that night, he tells police that he has more information.
Andreas claims he saw Sally and Thomas together at 1:40 a.m. But Andreas also mentions that he is still her boyfriend.
In other words, the lies begin right away. The blackjack dealer who was so taken with Sally was interviewed. He didn't report anything out of the ordinary. He remembers having a drink with her in the bar and then walking her to her room and saying goodnight to her around 1 a.m. He insists that his interactions with Sally are friendly and purely social. By his account, he's simply a fan who was impressed with her talent. And then he said goodnight.
Thomas claims that after his friendly introduction and drink, he said goodnight for the evening. Mike has quite another story. He tells the officer that he and Sally had consensual sex 48 hours before her death.
Police are beginning to understand that despite Andreas's claim that him and Sally were still dating, she was actually single. It's starting to look like Andreas didn't take well to being dumped at all.
Police find confirmation that Sally had ended her relationship with Andreas. Facts are adding up. Andreas will need a second interview to get his story straight.
It doesn't take long for Andreas to admit that he's lied and that he and Sally haven't been seeing each other for 4 months. He admits he was a bit jealous to see her flirting with so many other guys the night before she died.
The swipe records for the room cards are recovered. Authorities have the opportunity to compare the men's stories and their actual locations to see if what they're saying stands up to scrutiny. And it turns out the men have a lot to be nervous about. Records show that there is an entry into Thomas's cabin at 12:50 a.m., contrary to his own report that he said goodnight at 1. Andreas's claim that he saw the pair together at 1:40 a.m. remains a mystery. Thomas's account of the night is not the only one with inconsistencies. Records show Andreas leaving and entering his room at 12:40 a.m., 1:18 a.m., and 2:03 a.m.
Are the stories that police are being told just that, stories?
The times clearly aren't adding up. Thomas says that he was in bed before Andreas even saw him with Sally, so someone is lying. And most importantly, why was Andreas going in and out of his room all night long?
Sally is a talented young woman who makes a big impression on everyone she meets. Her untimely passing hits her fellow crew members hard. The sense of loss is felt by everyone aboard. But at the same time Sally is being honored, the investigation into her death heats up. Andreas is drilled about the inconsistencies in his swipe records, as the autopsy toxicology report is performed at Auckland City Hospital. Will facts and science finally expose the truth? Back home in Cleveland, Sally's anxious parents are shocked when they see their daughter's autopsy results. Their 22-year-old daughter is said to have died of undetermined causes.
The result of their investigation and all the interviews is simply that there's no evidence of any violence or suspicious circumstances.
The proof and the facts are within the autopsy, then the toxicology that indicated that there was no cause of death. Do you rule out every other anatomical reason why the individual hasn't died, but you can't tell the family why they've died? So it was deemed undetermined.
Understandably, Sally's family didn't want to just accept the fact that their healthy 24-year-old daughter died without explanation, so they contacted the authorities in New Zealand.
But the Miller family reports that authorities are difficult to connect with or just non-responsive.
The parents suspect that the men in Sally's life may have had something to do with her death, and they suggest that she may have been drugged. The toxicology report was inconclusive, and there was no DNA evidence to suggest that somebody else was present.
The family accuses the New Zealand Police Department of not performing a thorough forensic investigation.
When this sort of thing happens, the family often has to take matters into their own hands and launch their own investigation.
But the request is determined to be unnecessary. Police maintain that they have found no suspicious circumstances in Sally Miller's death. But the Miller family will not give up on their hunt for the truth.
Her family knows how dedicated she was to her career.
The exhumation and autopsy reveal no evidence of foul play, no evidence of strangulation, suffocation, or violence, no injection of any substance, no evidence of sexual activity that evening, and that she had no defensive wounds. Nothing even revealed by fingernail scrapings. The family gets no answers.
It's so unsettling for a family to have that sort of answer after they've gone through an investigation, there has been an autopsy, and they've exhumed the body, and they still don't have a concrete answer to why their loved one has died.
Despite the results of the autopsy, the family is still convinced that their daughter is murdered. Unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be any way to prove it.
Richard and Mary set up the Sally Miller Fund for the Performing Arts in their daughter's memory. Sally's family may never know if she was the victim of foul play, but through their scholarship, Sally's artistry, talent, love of music, and dance will live on.